Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Hometown Musician Spotlight. And today, my guest, you could find him behind the skins anywhere from Chicago to New Orleans and almost everywhere in between. It's my pleasure to introduce an up-and-coming legend, Benny Piazza. Thanks for being here, Benny.
Thanks, Paulie. Thanks for having me.
You got it, my brother. Hey, Benny, where were you born? Where'd you grow up at?
I was born in Flint, Michigan, which explains a lot.
Too much water?
I did drink the water, but I wore my diapers, moved up to Cadillac. Here's my Michigan map here, until about the age of 4. And then I spent those formative years until high school in Port Huron, Michigan. And that's where I started playing the drums.
Yeah. So your mom somehow identified your musical talent at a very young age. Or wait a second, was it the teacher first?
Yeah, so it was the teacher. I was a pretty mischievous 4th grader, and my band director, Kenneth Defoe, I just remember him leaning over my desk saying, "You ever thought about playing the drums, son?" And so I went home and told my mom. I was sure that she would shoot me down, because what parent wants their kid to be playing the drums? But she just said, "Come with me." She brought me to the kitchen. She handed me a spatula and a wooden spoon. And then we went to the living room. She put on the Genesis record, and she wanted to see if I could keep time. 1 and 2 and 3. And so I'm just tapping 8th notes with the right hand, quarter notes with the left hand. And I've done a lot of teaching, so there really is a natural sort of knack. And what she was doing, she didn't realize it, but she was verifying that I could keep time and that I had different coordination and independence. I could move my limbs independently and in time. So she took me to the music store that night and bought me a xylophone, because I needed you had to do a year on the xylophone, or they called it a bell kit, to prove you were disciplined enough to start hitting stuff. Yeah, and then I played the snare drum in 5th grade and 6th grade, and I started playing drum set in 6th grade as part of the jazz band. And Mr. Defoe was really instrumental in introducing me to a lot of great drummers. Ron Bushy from Iron Butterfly, John Bonham, who else? Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa.
Wow, those are some legends.
Yeah, he would just play videos for me, and he just wanted me to soak it in.
Yeah.
And also, he's responsible for this. Am I allowed to cuss a little bit?
Sure.
For this beat to shit jam kit I got here. I bought this kit in 6th grade from his son at a garage sale for $200. And it's great for these Tuesday night hangs at Finnegan's when a lot of local drummers come in and wail on them.
This is a signature kit for sure.
Yeah, it's held together by stickers. Yep.
Timpani's also, I think you said when you started high school,
That's right. Yeah, so you got a good memory. So I moved to Plymouth after 8th grade. My dad's job changed, and it was a real blessing because they had a great marching band program. So before I even started high school, I had over 100 friends that were all in the marching band. And I tried out for the snare line, but I didn't know doubles, where you hit two strokes at a time instead of singles. It's so anyway, I didn't make the snare line that year. I was playing timpanis and marimba, but all throughout high school, I was in pretty much every band class you could do: jazz band, symphonic band, wind ensemble, pep band, winter drum line. So over my high school career, I got to play snare, bass drum, and then my senior year, I was put on the tenor line, or they're also called the quads, but they've got 6 drums all mounted on this big harness. And I was just a 130-pound little ginger, but we got a new line of drums my senior year, so the tenor players all quit because they were too heavy. And Mr. Brian Ames, who was my band director, great percussionist and wonderful man, he called me into his office. Benny, or I didn't go by Benny back then. That wasn't until... Anyway, so he was like,
Benjamin?
yeah, Benjamin, we need you to play tenors this year. And I think I'm probably half an inch shorter because of that season. But it was a lot of fun. And we made it to state my freshman year. That was the first time in high school history we made it to state. And then we made it again my senior year in a higher class. So very historic, and built a lot of character. You know, when I'm loading my drums out, I just think of those times marching in the snow sometimes, or marching in parades in the blazing heat. I'm like, man, this is a piece of cake. I get to sit down the whole night.
Are any of those friends from marching bands back in those days still? Do you still have any of those close friends, or even some of them that have gone on to continue their music career like you have?
Absolutely. Most of the cats that I stayed in touch with were on the drum line.
Okay.
Because that's a real bond. And I want to give a shout out to my boys in this homemade conspiracy. They got this band together in Plymouth, and I kind of played a part in helping them find each other. You know, it started with Chandler Price and Connor jamming, and they needed a drummer. I was like, man, call up Tyler. He's always sending me videos of he's still practicing. He's got great chops. Then they needed a singer, and I recommended my buddy Dylan Hall, who I just talked with yesterday, and we became buddies. We were delivering pizzas together during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And after our shift was over, we would just jam in the parking lot, you know, like 2 a.m. And then they needed a bass player, so I recommended my buddy Mitchell, who was on the worship band with me. Great bass player. So this homemade conspiracy, check them out. They're doing the damn thing. And they got some great singles out. And yeah.
So not to skip any steps, so from the time you graduated high school, what was the journey to you finding the Chicagoland market? Was it a specific musician? How did you get out here?
So after college, I went to Valparaiso University, the Vale of Paradise, and I studied engineering for a year. And that was a pretty tough year because I went from doing all music all the time, all throughout high school, to trying to turn my back on all of it. And I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do, but my grades were so bad, I was going to drop out of school. And I was just pretty lost. But I stopped and talked to the jazz professor, who I didn't realize at the time, he was also the drum instructor, head of the drum department, Professor Jeffrey Brown. And I just wanted to thank him for bringing some sunshine into my life, because I'd walk through the music building on my way to calculus. I'd get to hear the jazz band rehearsing, and I told him I wish I would have done it. Wish I would have joined that year because it sounded so great. And he was like, well, come back next year, try out. I said, I don't think I'm gonna be in school. My grades are pretty bad. And so he asked me to play for him, and he's like, let's give a semester in the music department a shot, see if we could turn your grades around. And he really stuck his neck out for me to keep me in school and get me switched over. And I turned my grades around. I got to meet all these business professionals in his music industry class, including John Jesse, and that's how I started shooting fireworks with Melrose Pyrotechnics. And I just got connected with a lot of Chicago musicians. After I graduated, I was waiting tables for a little bit, and then I got a chance to audition with Big Dog Mercer, who I just saw a week ago at the Blue 26 Jam. He's a killer slide guitar player. He's got a wonderful voice, a lot of great originals. You should check him out. And he was instrumental in being patient with me while I learned the blues. And I was playing, that's how I got to know Matt Cartwright too. Matt was his bass player. So I moved to Chicago once I got that gig and played with him for 2 years until the pandemic hit. And while I was in Chicago, I really busted my ginger tushy to go out every night, go to there was tons of jams back then. It's not the same after the pandemic. But I just made my rounds and was just trying to listen and learn. I spent a lot of time at Kingston Mines, watching the Corey Dennison band and the Mike Wheeler band, studying Rick King, my guru buddy, and Cleo Cole, who's just killer cats.
Yeah. You mentioned putting the sunshine in somebody's life. You know, the first time I saw you play, you were sitting right there.
Yeah.
And I was right there.
Yeah.
And I'm with a friend, and we're having a drink, and you know, music's great. All of a sudden, I lock eyes on you, and I tell my buddy, man, look at this drummer. And it was almost like you were saying, I see you, you see me.
Yeah.
This is a big party.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you bring. Your presence and your aura is one of an uppity. You're a little bit of a showman behind the drums, which is always appreciated.
Yeah.
Does that come naturally? Do you work on some of your moves, if you will?
True. Some of the moves I learned when I was playing with Smells Like Nirvana. That was this Nirvana tribute, and I, you know, that was a big stage, and I had to be flashy. You know,
Yeah.
I would be like pointing people out and doing little stick flips and stuff. But I think a big game changer for me was reading Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson. He talked about how you're playing and the energy that you're feeling and putting out, that affects the quality of the sound and the performance too. And I was thinking, like, man, yeah, when I'm playing, I usually just have this concentration sort of face, like, but I'm not really showing any emotion. So that's when I started trying to smile.
Yeah.
And I realized when I smiled, it made me feel better.
Yeah.
And also, just doing your homework. You know, if you're prepared for the gig, then it's going to be a lot easier and more relaxed.
You mentioned emotion and voodoo, which leads me to my next question.
Oh.
What has your experiences in New Orleans, what has it given you both spiritually and musically?
Oh, man. Well, New Orleans saved my life, and it also brought me to a reckoning because I was always kind of a drinker in my late teens and early 20s, but it started getting pretty wild with them Nirvana boys, just because I didn't really have a job anymore besides just traveling with the band, and so I could just drink all the time. And you know, there were some gigs that were sloppy that, you know, I regret, but eventually I just got to the point where I couldn't keep up the pace of touring and drinking. So I had an opportunity to take a break and move to New Orleans with a lady. She was a traveling nurse and super sweet girl, and we just lived there for 3 months, and I was trying to get this drinking out of my system, and it got pretty bad. Pretty easy to drink in New Orleans. They got bars that never close, ever. So I came to a reckoning down there. I realized I gotta cut all this out. And what really helped me is I bumped into this guy, Jason Ricci, who I had jammed with back at Austin a few years prior, and I was aware of him and his struggles with addiction, and he just seemed like a very kind person. And I was at this album release party for Dean Zucchero, watching my buddy Joey Houck, great guitar player, based out of Alaska, who lives in New Orleans now. And Jason was on the gig. So I, like the whole gig, I was like, man, I just saw his post about being sober for a number of years now, and I thought I should talk to that guy. And I just told him I needed to stop drinking, and he helped me get connected with a great group of sober musicians and artists that I'm still very good friends with today.
Beautiful story.
Yeah. So that was my first time living in New Orleans, was last year from December through March. I drove my partner at the time back up north after her contract ended, and then I got offered a tour down there. So I went back down for a month, was playing with this band Hash Cabbage, and at the time Jason's drummer passed away. So, you know, we just had some quality time together, heartfelt conversations. I just felt so bad for my buddy losing one of his best friends. And came back up north and shot fireworks all summer. And then I was offered another tour with Hash Cabbage in October of last year. So I went back down. And that's when Jason mentioned to me that they're considering me to audition for his band, The Bad Kind. And it's like, wow, that's amazing, you know? So I went back home and put some audition clips together, and we stayed in touch. And then he got a call he called up his old guitar player, John Lisi, who I had played some gigs with in New Orleans. And John, aka Jackie DeLuna, recommended me for the spot, and he hired me for his March tour just this past March. And it went really well. A whole month on the road, playing in the Midwest and the Northeast. We call it the Feast of the East. I ate magnificently. And I ended up staying in New Orleans another month, April into May, to play more shows with Jason. And I'm actually going to be heading back down there tomorrow for some more New Orleans shows.
Awesome.
Recording, touring with Hash Cabbage, and then a sweet Florida tour at the end of June with Jason.
Yeah. So among your many talents, I've seen you play guitar and sing. I've seen you move furniture. Thank you again, by the way.
You got it.
But
funny.
Also, tell us about exploding bombs.
Yeah, man.
We don't get to explode bombs in our lives. Tell us about your side job, Benny.
Oh, well, that's okay. So you see all these orange stickers on my kit. That I got those from my fireworks job. And like I said before, Jeff Brown introduced me to John Jesse. He's a audio engineer at the time for Melrose Pyrotechnics. So our fireworks are synchronized with music. I'm like, man, I've always loved burning things. So he mentioned he needed some extra hands, and I just kept emailing him. So he's like, yeah, okay, you can hop on a show with me. That was, I think, 9 years ago. Yeah, 2016. Then the next year I did a few more shows. Then the next year I worked at the plant in the summertime. So I really got to learn how to pack shows, inventory, weed whack the bunkers.
Yeah.
It's this old World War II munitions plant out in Kingsbury. But instead of bombs of war, now it's bombs of love and joy.
And you do Sox Park too?
I do.
Sox Park?
Yep. I shoot for the Sox on occasion, Navy Pier, Rosemont, and every July I put my own crew together. And I'm in charge, baby. And it's a lot of responsibility, but I have the experience now where it's just fun. It's just a blast, you know. And I'll tell you the story too of how I got my nickname,
Boomba.
Benny Boomba. Yeah, I'm all decked out today. Because a lot of people think that's a drumming thing. But when I told my mom I was going to start shooting fireworks back in 2016, then she's like, you know, when you were about to be baptized, the pastor said it's time to dunk little Benny Boomba.
Get out of here.
For real, man.
Get out.
And she said, don't call him that. That sounds like a gangster name. But apparently she told me about that nickname like 2 decades later.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just kind of stuck. I don't know who. I don't think I started. Or I think I started. I just told a friend about it.
Yeah.
He started calling me Boomba.
Yeah.
It was actually when I moved to Chicago.
Hey, when you're in Chicago, everybody has a nickname.
Right.
If you don't get a nickname, that means you never leave your house. All you do is leave your house once, and somebody will tag you with a nickname.
Hey, it's Joey White Sox.
That's right. Exactly. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I had these great crew of roommates, and I started going by Benny because it was jazzier.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, the last 2 questions are always the most fun questions, hypothetical questions.
Okay.
So, if there was any room in the world, past or present, that you could play, what venue, what room, what would that be? What would be your pinnacle?
Wow. Like a stadium even?
It even could be Red Rocks. I've heard I've heard everything from Royal Albert Hall to Red Rocks to...
Man, well, there's a lot of great, amazing stadiums out there. But I think the room that I want to play again is Antone's down in Austin.
Okay.
The reason I say that, first of all, it's a very hallowed and famous blues hall.
Okay.
But when I played there, I was so schnockered, I didn't even remember the show. And
So
so,
you need to
I'd
do it
like
over.
to go back sober.
Yeah.
I want to redeem myself, man.
All right. All right.
Almost 6 months living in God's grace.
Congratulations.
Yes,
couldn't happen to a better guy. So the last question, if you could trade places with another musician, dead or alive, for a whole weekend, who would that be?
For a whole weekend?
For a whole weekend,
Man.
you could be that person.
Am I allowed to time travel? Like go back?
Of course, of course.
Okay.
Past or present. Doesn't have to be somebody who's alive.
Good gravy. Well,
What, are you going to say Mozart or something?
I got a lot of Arzab.
Mozart or something?
No, man. There's so many great drummers out there, but I think playing with the Police would be a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah. Back when they were in their prime, man, Stuart Copeland was one of my first influences because the Police are my dad's favorite band.
Okay.
But I love Rush too, and obviously John Bonham and Dave Grohl, some of my favorite drummers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be great to play with the Police. Those some pretty formative songs. And I want to give a quick shout out to one of my other good friends, Jack Whittle. I played in a band with him in his band for 3 years. That was my first time making a record too. It's a great record.
Oh, I didn't even get to that. Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Well, we worked on that for 2 years in Mark Adrian's studio. Who's another buddy of mine.
Talented guitarist.
Yeah, shout out to the Milk Billies.
Yes.
Both those guys have given me a lot of work over the years, and I'm so thankful to know them and be able to grow with them and be challenged musically.
Yes.
Learning the blues and lots of other styles of music. Would definitely not be the musician I am today without Jack Whittle, Mark Adrian, Big Dog Mercer, and of course all the other great drummers I look up to.
Shout out to those three guys, for sure.
Yep. And my band teachers, Ken Defoe, Brian Ames, and Jeff Brown.
Sounds great.
I'm just a product of the great people I try to surround myself with.
Awesome. Thanks for taking some time, Benny. Really appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And I'll be playing with Jack Whittle tonight.
You're going to have a
on
jam
Scotty's stage. That's right.
Scotty's
Every Tuesday, 9 to late.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap it up. And until next time, peace, everybody.
All right. Cheers. Love, peace, and hair grease.
It turned out all right, man.